Hello and welcome to Jessie Book Club. Today we are reviewing The Royal Succession by Maurice Druon, the fourth book in the Accursed Kings series. The book opens straight after the death of Louis X, with no heir in between. Everybody is vying for power. The Regency is up for grabs as Queen Clemence is only 4 months pregnant. Valois, her uncle, and the uncle of the deceased King Louis, is trying to bully Queen Clemence into accepting him as regent and forcing her to move back to Paris so he can have all the trappings of a regent while she is pregnant, before anyone else can make a move. He plans on presenting the dead king's brother Philippe with a fait accompli. Meanwhile, Guccio arrives with Cardinal Duese seeking sanctuary in Lyon. He announces the death of King Louis X to the cardinal, at which point Duese immediately goes to tell Philippe his brother, the king, is dead, at which point Philippe closes the gates of the city of Lyon, not allowing any other messengers to arrive, then declares himself regent. He knows Valois is his main opponent for the regency, but there is also going to be the Count of Burgundy to deal with. This book feels as if it could have been written by George R.R. Martin. It is so A Song of Ice and Fire or House of the Dragon. You can definitely see where George R.R. Martin got a lot of his inspiration. This is the book that on my first read through I lost interest in this series because there is so much time dedicated to the cardinals trying to decide who should be pope during the conclave, and I just didn't find that as interesting as the French court. However, the conclave does have its funny moments. The scene where the cardinals are bricked up inside the church to force them to decide on a pope through starvation and deprivation is such a good, funny scene. And then Cardinal Duese dissembling and acting very feeble is such a great political move on his part, and it reminds me of a certain George R.R. Martin character, Maester Pycelle. I'm going to be making a Maester Pycelle Cardinal Duese comparison video, so keep an eye out for that in the coming weeks. The book then shifts back to Marie de Cressy, who is taken by her family from Cressy and left with Ptolemy in Paris, who arranges for her to enter a convent to wait for Guccio. She is very happy to know that Guccio is not dead or in prison, but that is all she knows about him, and you can tell that convent life is going to be very hard for this pregnant teen. Meanwhile, after breaking up the cardinals, Philippe has been moving fast and has taken control of all the important parts of the realm. He then presents his uncle Valois and little brother Charles with a fait accompli. Having already declared himself regent, he has outmaneuvered the older Valois. The scene where Philippe asks Valois for the keys to the treasury is masterful, and you can definitely see how the political wrangling in this book inspired George R.R. Martin. There are big moves being made just with words, so follow them closely. Now officially regent, Philippe starts fretting about Queen Clemence maybe having a boy, but that is the least of his problems, as at least he would still be regent until the boy comes of age. The problem is what should happen if Clemence has a girl, because dead King Louis already has a daughter, Jeanne, from his first marriage, though she could be illegitimate due to her mother's infidelity. She has never been declared illegitimate, though, or a bastard, so Philippe has to go about trying to prove that women are unfit to rule. Of course, this goes down very badly with his mother-in-law, Maud, who runs her own county. Just think, isn't this the plot to House of the Dragon? Bastard children who are obviously illegitimate with claims to the throne, and the idea of women's right to rule? Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm making a video about it, so check that out. Subscribe. It's coming out in a couple of weeks, just after the premiere of House of the Dragon. I don't know why, but this book doesn't grab me in the same way the first 3 books did. It was the same the first time I read this book through, and I'm feeling it again now. I don't know what's lacking, but it's lacking something. The Great Council scenes were very amusing. I really enjoyed the last living son of St. Louis, who was completely mad and thought he was out of tourney. I kept giggling when I was listening to that on my headphones, walking around. Robert of Artois really holds his own during this entire segment, and the passage where it is described that Robert of Artois is on nobody's side but his own was great. And of course, Robert immediately jumps on the bandwagon that women can't be allowed to inherit or rule because he wants to get his county back from his Aunt Maud, and this is just what she feared and was trying to get Philip to stop from happening. Philippe, as regent, is playing a dangerous game, trying to make sure the Burgundians support him, even though Burgundy has its own horse in the game. They have Marguerite's maybe bastard daughter Jeanne, the Duke of Burgundy's niece. Philippe keeps saying that if Clemence has a girl, of course Jeanne will inherit when she comes of age, but anyone with any sense can see that this is never going to happen. Philippe is lucky though, because the Duke of Burgundy is actually quite dumb and believes all of his noble proclamations about inheritance, even agreeing to be betrothed to Philippe's oldest daughter, who is only 8. Robert of Artois then goes on a rampage through Maud's lands, taking castles, and uncovers some evidence that Maud poisoned King Louis X of France. Meanwhile, back in Paris, Philippe the Regent is trying to contain Robert of Artois' rampage, telling Maud, his mother-in-law, that she is going to have to make some concessions if she wants peace, at which point Maud, completely enraged, throws the fact that she poisoned his brother, King Louis X, back in Philip's face, telling Philip that she poisoned King Louis for him. Philippe is horrified, but pragmatic enough to understand that if this were to ever come to light, it will fall on his head and people will think he ordered it, so that he could claim the crown. While all this is going on in Paris, Cardinal Dueze is elected Pope because he managed to dissemble enough to convince all the other cardinals locked up with him that he was dying. Of course, he is in the best of health and remarkably makes a recovery as soon as he is crowned Pope John the 22nd. He immediately gets his brother ennobled by the regent Philippe and puts his family in a position of power. Dueze and the regent Philippe now have a strong alliance that was built on the closing of the gates of Lyon. That fateful morning when the gates of Lyon were closed, they made a pope and a king. Pope John, because of his alliance with Philippe, writes a letter to the traitor Robert of Artois demanding that he surrender Artois and himself to the regent Philippe. Robert of Artois decides to surrender but not disband his army, feeling that he has an ace up his sleeve because he has found the witch who made the poison Maud used to kill King Louis X. But Philippe, the smartest man in the room, even compared to Robert, manages to outthink him and outfox him, throwing Robert in prison until all the castles and lands that Robert took in Artois are surrendered and his army disbanded. Robert of Artois is enraged at being outthought for once. Queen Clemence finally has her baby, which is a boy, and they call him John the First. But the labour was not easy. Forceps had to be used, and they are now lacking a wet nurse. So Marie de Cressy is summoned from her convent to be wet nurse to the king. She has just given birth to a healthy baby boy, also named John. During King John's christening, he has a seizure after being dunked into the freezing water of the font. The rumours about Maud being a poisoner have been swirling about the court, and Bouville worried that Maud, the king's godmother, attempted to poison him at the christening, causing the seizure, does a baby swap with Marie's little John. This goes ahead when the king is presented for the first time to the barons. But this time, Maud actually does try to poison the king and is successful in this poisoning attempt. Poor little John Baglioni dies not even a month old after vomiting over the regent, Philippe. Philippe, of course, goes straight ahead and declares himself King of France, never doubting for a second that the baby that died in his arms was not the real King John of France. It's interesting here to speculate whether Philippe knew what his mother-in-law was up to. Philippe does hint him out, but he does it in such an open manner that it could be taken either way, and even Maud herself wonders what game Philippe is playing, keeping his hands so clean and not knowing for sure whether the baby was poisoned. But Maud has decided it was all worth the risk. Poisoning two kings was definitely worth what it took to make her daughter Jeanne queen. When Fée de Bouville tells Marie that her baby is dead and she must now care for the real King of France but keep him hidden, she is understandably devastated. She is sent back to her convent, but a few days later, Lady Bouville turns up and bullies Marie with fears of hell to renounce Guccio and go back to Cressy with her brothers and the real King of France to live in obscurity, with a pension promised, of course. Marie is forced to write a letter dictated by Lady Bouville, and when Guccio gets the letter from Marie saying that she doesn't love him anymore and that she is going back to Cressy because she is ashamed of what she has done, he acts like a spoiled child, raging around and then going to get drunk with Robert Courtois, newly released from jail. They go to a brothel where Guccio has sex with a whore and then he slaps her after taking her to bed, and I cannot stand Guccio Baglioni. He is just horrible. Why did Marie ever fall in love with him? Robert Courtois, now released from prison less than a day, is starting to plot against Maud all over again. In the interim, Philippe has declared himself King of France. However, the Duke of Burgundy is not happy about this, believing his niece Jeanne, Louis X's daughter of questionable legitimacy, should be queen, and this is when Philippe starts looking for ancient French laws and customs that say women can't inherit, discovering the obscure, not well-known Salic law. Because of Burgundy, Philippe is anxious to get his coronation over with and ends up having to bribe his uncle Valois to support him. The grounds of his kingship are that shaky, and he knows that Maud has had two kings killed on his behalf and is terrified anyone is going to uncover this. When his younger brother, Charles de la Marche, escapes the coronation by climbing over a wall and ends up stuck in a marsh, that was really funny. I laughed. Then, at the actual crowning ceremony, the old Duchess Agnes speaking out about how women do have a right to rule was epic, even if nobody paid her any attention whatsoever. I give this book 7 out of 10. I don't think it's quite as good as the previous 3 books. The best bit of it was definitely little King John dying, or was it King John? The rest of the book was super political and not really my thing. Could have done with a bit more drama to spice it up. Goodread gives this book 4.2 out of 5 on Goodread. Like this video if you enjoy this sort of content. It's the only way the algorithm notices me at all. And leave me a comment. Did you see any evidence that this book is the basis for House of the Dragon? Or did you see any callbacks to A Clash of Kings in this book? Because I've seen both. So leave me a comment, let me know if you've seen that, and subscribe because I have so much Accursed Kings content coming up for you guys. Until next time, don't cross ma route of our toit. Bye!